Bam! Hello, MTR friends. Hope everybody's doing well. Today is part 4. Well, this is part 4 of my CZ457 MTR stock repair video series. Now, when I left you guys last time, I had first, explained how this stock came to be broken. I had explained how I installed a pin with epoxy right here, which goes about here. And then in the next video, I installed some biscuits, which, for those of you who don't know, biscuits typically look like this. Mine were custom made, but I installed them on opposite sides of the crack, kind of splayed out a little bit to support the split on either side. And then I explained in part 4, which is this video, how I would go about repairing or to talk about how I'd go about repairing and make the tear outs look a little bit better. So that's the purpose of this video, is to kind of talk to you guys how I would go about kind of blending these areas in, or start the process of blending these in. So for my astute viewers who have been following along with this, you'll notice that I have not touched this barrel channel at all from before. I mentioned that I had mixed some sawdust, which is here, with some epoxy and dusted in there. We're not at the point where we're going to worry about that yet, so that's remain untouched. The purpose of this video is to talk about things like this little bit of tear out here. And you can see I've worked on it here. The crack goes across here. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. You can kind of see it across the stippling. Now, it takes a long time to blend in stippling, so I'm not going to do it on camera because, well, it'd be like the worst, most boring video ever. But I left a portion right here. And it's going to be, I'm going to do my best to kind of, hang on, let me play with the lighting a little bit, see if we can adjust that here for you guys. I don't know if that's better or worse. Right there. Oh yeah, there you can kind of see it. There's like a line that goes across. So I purposely left that kind of untouched, as opposing to this sort of thing, which I've started the sawdust process. I left that for you guys to kind of show you and demonstrate on camera how you kind of go about that, as well as this side. This side, I started the dusting process, kind of get it out there. You can see it's kind of matte finish, whereas this side is factory, and you can see the tear out right there. And I apologize if like I'm saying there, because I can see it, but you guys can't. We will do our best to kind of focus on this, and we're going to talk about a few tips that I have for you guys. Try to adjust this for you a little bit here. Let's call it there. Okay, for you guys, how you would repair this sort of thing. Now, like I think I touched on in the first video, that I am not Mr. Hey, let's hide it and blend it and try to fool everybody. I'm not like that. I try to make a nice solid repair first and foremost, and then make an aesthetic repair after. So what do you do in this situation? So you have some missing wood. One side I've worked on, one side I've not done, and I want to talk about the materials and the kind of procedure I use in this situation. This is super simple. You can't really screw this up, other than kind of a major issue that I'll talk about. But first, before I get into that, you'll notice some crap floating around here, and so I'll talk about some basic things that you need. This is an oil finished mystery CZ factory stain that they use. Nobody knows really what it is, but it's super tough, super robust, and I will call it an all-in-one oil finish. It's got a tint to it. It's got some sort of synthetic color to it, with an all-in-one kind of something or other. Now, they don't have some guy, girl rubbing this in at the factory. This is a spray-on, and it's super durable and it's super tough, and it kind of gives the best of both worlds. What it is not the original color of the wood. So that's important, because any work that you do to the stock, if you overdo or you're overzealous about sanding, you'll rub right through that, and then you have a separate problem, because the blending becomes a different type of blending. So we have to be aware of that sort of thing. The stock is not being refinished. The easiest way to blend a split or a crack is to refinish the stock. We're not doing that in the situation. So it makes it easier in one way because of the time invested, and then it makes it harder in a way because it's difficult to match the finish, perfectly, obviously. So we know that we have a major. You can see here from my, when I did the crack, you can see the green tinge because I used Scotch-Brite green, Scotch-Brite pad, and you can see where the epoxy picked up a little of that green residue, the dust, which is fine. Stippling is a different matter altogether. But anyway, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about a few things. You need some very basic tools. You need like an alcohol. This is like kind of 70% isopropyl. Doesn't really matter. 50, 70, 90, doesn't really matter. You need a wad of paper towels. You need a couple of bizarre tools like a plastic spreading knife, which I'll get to you in a second. You need a couple of magnifying glass. They're important. I have a couple here. Couple different ratios. One my kids have used and it's beat up. One is more in my shop. You need some post-it notes, preferably with notes from other projects that you're working on so that you can mess them up and wish that you hadn't. You need like some sort of straight edge. You need a safety pin stuck in a Nerf bullet because you need sometimes that kind of sharp point, and that's important to drag glue into cracks. The finer the needle, the better. I kind of like safety pins because they're kind of disposable. They're soft. You can bend them into shapes that you can't always do with pins and needles. So I kind of prefer these cheap Chinese ones. You don't always use them, but they're nice to have. And that's exactly the setup that I use within a Nerf bullet to hang on to it. Sometimes you need something like in most circumstances, one of the best things to use to repair a crack is like a CA glue, like a crazy glue. We're not going to use that today because it's not the type of finish that requires this, but something like an Anschutz gloss finish, this would be great on. What we are going to use today is this super fancy Sinful Colors dollar store nail polish clear, because this is a lacquer, and what we're aiming for is a lacquer type finish on this, because of the kind of agreeable nature of this sort of adhesive. Because what we're not doing when you're kind of blending a crack or a surface finish, you're not gluing or physically making this stronger. You're fooling the eye, you're blending the surface. So you don't have to worry about strength like you would when you repaired it. This is a separate thing altogether, and I want to get that out of the way. You're not repairing this anymore. You're cosmetically altering its appearance from the repair, from the issue that happened in the first place. That's important to remember, because once you kind of get away from the idea that the repair has happened, it's over, it's done with, and now we're into stage 2, 3, 5, whatever, which is kind of making this look better. So you'll need that, and then you'll also need some, as bedazzled as possible, kind of very, very fine artist paintbrush. The finer the better. So I bought this in a set, from kind of, I don't even remember where I bought it. Maybe it was from Amazon, but you can see how scary fine that is. That's important, and this is the one that we're going to choose today. You would use these points based on the size of your tear out on your particular repair. So my repair has tear out, as you guys have seen, but it's very minor, so we're going to use this sort of thing. Okay, you can see how fine that is. Very fine. Okay? And I will do my best to kind of get you a bird's eye view, dirty lens and all, of that significant tear out right there. And then on this side, this is what I wanted to highlight to you guys. There we go. As long as we don't get too much glare, you can see it right there. Okay, so very minor, and you can we can kind of play with that a little bit, but anyway, you'll need, I'll get to that in a second. You'll need some ultra fine Scotch-Brite. So this, I bought this in a bulk pack. It's definitely finer than, let's say, 3000 grit, the gray. I don't remember what it is exactly, but it's super fine. I should say quickly, this is used. The more it's used, the finer it is. So this is a used one. And also we have a piece of 1500 grit. I would prefer 2000 grit, but I can't find it. So this is what we're going to use. Doesn't really matter. It'll work for what we want. Remember, this isn't the final stage. This is the kind of, we're starting to repair the crack stage. So, and of course, stuff like scissors. So we're going to cut off a small piece of this Scotch-Brite. Doesn't really matter the size because, well, it's a sacrificial piece. Got a little baby here. Same with the sandpaper. We're going to cut off, doesn't really matter what you get because, well, we're not doing a very big area here. Okay, so of course this isn't in my shop. I'm doing my best to film this for you guys, and I'm going to focus on this for you first. You're going to need all the things that I've mentioned at your disposal, and you have to be ready to access them depending on what you're doing. Now, or what pops up. So I'm going to spray this on the wall here. So this one here is a little bit interesting because there's a void here that we want to fill with some of the sawdust down here. The tricky part about this is this finish that CZ has applied isn't very deep, but we want to make sure that we prepare the surface as best as we can because we will never match this color. You can fill this void with sawdust, but you'll never match this color properly. Like you can, I should say you could use like blending pens and markers and that sort of thing. Sure you could, but they wouldn't last, right? Because the finish pre-exists. So you want to very quickly just add a little bit of roughness with this 1500 grit, 2000 grit, whatever you're wanting to do. Now sandpaper is a little bit like the texture of sandpaper is nice and flat. The texture of a Scotch-Brite pad rather has so many surfaces that it conforms much better to rough areas. So you kind of want to use that after, and you just very quickly clean up that area in there. You can see the profile changes quite a bit. Okay, so here we have this sawdust and finish rather that we've just roughed up with the sandpaper and the Scotch-Brite, and you can see that crack has suddenly changed and it's not so bad here. It doesn't look as bad as it has before because, well, there's dust mixed in there, right? That's important because this is a process here. Now what you could do is you could clean it with isopropyl and you get it all ready for finish. That's not what you're going to do in this situation because you want to take advantage of the dust that exists here. You're going to get your fancy, super awesome dollar store lacquer, and you're most certainly not going to screw up your notes. And you're going to get yourself an area here, and you're going to apply some of this lacquer here. Now, you know nail polish. I know all of you guys know here. Your nail polish dries reasonably quickly. And what you're going to do in your best effort is you're going to apply some to this void. You're not going to stress about it. You're not going to worry about it being perfect. You're going to add some tack to that void. Okay, we'll just start out like that. Then you're going to take some of your ultra fine sawdust and you're going to put it right on there, just like that. Then you're going to use your old fingy. You're going to blend it across. See what's happened there? Okay, that void has been filled. Well, basically filled. Then you're going to take some more of this and you're going to tap it on top. Now, can you screw this up? Nope, you can't. You can see that's getting wet there. Okay, so that has applied tack to the void. You put sawdust on top, which stuck to that tack, building up a layer. You're going to add a little bit more. You're going to use your fingy and you're going to blend it in. Before you know, you have this dark spot here. Okay. Sometimes it takes a couple of times. The reason I said, can you screw this up? You'll see as I do this how the surface changes. Now, let's say, oh my God, I made a mess and it didn't work out. Well, you can very quickly remove this and start over because nail polish is very friendly. But suddenly you can see that that void is disappearing before your eyes, right? And one of the tricky parts about using sawdust is when I ground out those biscuits, the grit of the sawdust is not indicative of a final coat. We're going to get to that later. But you can see I'm applying more and to that little crack area, tear out, and you can see that it's blending more and more, and it's bringing up the surface area to the point where I'm happy with it. Now, if I can focus on it, you can see how the color contrast, right there. You can see where that tear out has been repaired and it's overlapped, and the lacquer now is starting to dry a little bit. I can feel it. Now, you can use the roughness of your hand and you can try and burnish it a little bit. This is all an acceptable time. You'll see the color change as you go. And as crazy as that sounds, you can also take something like, instead of taking the grit part of the sandpaper, take the opposite side, which is the paper side, and burnish it as well. Sounds crazy, I know, but it's important because when the manufacturer makes the sandpaper and they put the grit on this side, the manufacturing process will also embed roughness and grit to this side, just in the manufacturing process. So if this side is advertised as 1500 grit, this might be, let's say, an 8000 grit, just with random grits in there. But it most certainly is abrasive, much more abrasive than, let's say, just your fingy. And so you rub back and forth a couple of times and you'll see where it shines up a little bit, and you have this spot. And I can feel it's just slightly proud, which is what you want. And it's provided you with a little bit of texture for you to work on later as it cures, and you can address it in the finishing part. But you can see that I filled that void in literally a minute, 2 minutes tops. Simply, easy, with dollar store tools. It doesn't make a difference. So we're going to leave that one there while it flash cures, and we're going to move on to this guy, which is on a more visible surface. Now, sometimes you're tempted to reuse this and your brush might start to harden up like mine has. It's fine, doesn't matter. We're going to get some more of this dollar store clear coat on there, and we're going to see if this brush will last for the next one. And now, this is difficult for me to do because normally you'd want to take great care with this, but what you want to do is you want to kind of force it down in that crack a little bit. And let's say, oh my God, I fucked up. Nope, gone. You just wipe it up and you start over. You got some time to work with this sort of thing. So we get some sawdust on there like we did before. You see how that's vanished almost? Now, vanished I mean in terms of the tear out. We still have to blend it a little bit. But what we're doing is we're filling the void with sawdust and lacquer to help the blending process, which will be one of the last ones, become easier for us in the blending stage. I know I'm trying to talk and do at the same time. Okay, there. You can see where the void has started to disappear. It's filled right there. And it's important because you want to get it above the surface so you can smooth it out, get your finish on there, whatever you're doing. So that one I feel is pretty much as far as I want to go because it wasn't as big as the other one. But we're going to play with it a little bit more, just to be sure. And the same as before, like I mentioned, you get in there with the other side of the paper, and then, like, let's say you want to get your Scotch-Brite in there, you know? You can do that too. The Scotch-Brite is a little bit more aggressive than the other side of the paper, and you'll see it vanish. You'll see that right there, right? See the finish of the lacquer, right? And the sawdust. But if I worked that a little bit, and I was careful, because the lacquer's still soft, it's a nail polish, but you'll see that I'll gradually work it down. And like, listen, you go a little bit too far, you just do it again. The key here is you want to make sure that you're blending this. You do not want to make too much of a, you can still see, sorry, that's still a uniform color. You don't want to go too crazy with a sandpaper, for example, although that would be faster, and remove that finish. So let's say I'm rubbing this for 20 minutes and I'm not getting anywhere. Well, it's time to break out the 1500 grit, you know, and you're going to try and I can feel through my thumb that it's proud. You can see that the surface has changed a little bit. That's okay. You want to make sure that you're putting pressure on the lacquer that you've just repaired and not the actual finish from CZ. And you'll see the color changes, right, as the sandpaper, because even though it's 1500 grit, it's quite aggressive. You get right back in there. You just, slow is the name of the game with this. And then you work at it over and over until you get the point where that void is smooth to your finger. And your finger is a much better indicator than your eyes, because it can feel. And if it can feel it, and sometimes, like, my fingers are wrecked, and so a better choice for me to use my pinky, and that is much more readable than my index finger for me, just from years of doing stupid shit. And so you can use that as a guide, and you'll work that down until the proudness or the messiness of your cut has, or your blend has disappeared. And this takes time, it takes practice, you know? The key here is you don't want to cut through the stain. You want to make sure you sit on the surface. And then let's say you're not getting any luck. Well, this is where your needle comes in, for example. You'll get in there and you'll work at it with the point of that, scraping that lacquer. And what you're doing here is you're speeding up the process that the sandpaper has. And you're just, because that lacquer's still soft, and you're speeding up the process of the sanding, just working on the surface of that crack. Until it starts to kind of get to the point where you're happy. And you go back and forth, and like I said, the name of this game here is you are not trying to go through that factory finish. You want to stay right with that lacquer that you've worked on. And so for me, I'm getting to the point where I'm just getting uncomfortable with how much I've sanded this so far. And so I'm, you know, my point to that is like, I know I've showed you guys how to do this. I'm reaching the point where the finishing part, I don't want to go too far, because I would choose to finish this on camera, off camera rather. But you can see where it's just proud in the crack. A little bit of extra on the side from the epoxy from previous, not from today, but you can see where I filled that. So I'm going to leave that here because I don't want to go too far and ruin that. But that's how you fill the crack in the beginning stages of refinishing. And like, I got tons of work to do from the epoxy. That's all good. I just wanted to show you guys how exactly you go about filling tear outs. And like, this one here bleeds over, and you can see that this one was much worse, and I had to blend it over. So what I did with that one was I used the epoxy to my advantage, and I added quite a big layer back here. And then what I'll do is, as I work it back, I'll soften the edges, I'll blend it in, just like you would if you were repainting an auto body panel. You would start farther away and you'd blend it in to make the panels match from, you know, from new paint to old paint. Because you can see that that crack is, you know, there's quite a bit more to do here that I'll have to do off camera, of course. But you kind of see, you can see right here where it needs a little bit of touch up from where the epoxy. And so that's where the nail polish does such a great job, because as a lacquer, it's like super easy to work with. And you can see where I've added that. And that's all you need to do. You let it cure a little bit. And this will take you a couple of times over and over, and you might not be happy with it, and you might have to go back and reblend it in, but it gives you a sense of what's involved with blending this to your satisfaction. And then, like, I don't know if I have any that'll work, but it's like you can also do it, no, I don't have any that'll work, but I'll try to show you on this one again. Let's say you don't have any sawdust, you can actually put this on there like that and then actually rub it. And in a lot of cases, if you don't have a crazy finish on top, that will help blend it in. You can see how that kind of fooled the eye there. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, you take this and you Scotch-Brite rather, and it'll pick up the surface dust and finish, and it'll help wash that in. I've already put that sawdust in to fill it in, but you can see how it blends it in. And that's more or less how you refinish something like this, is you fill the void so it doesn't trick the eye, and then you go back and you kind of blend it. See what I'm saying? So anyway, I thought I'd show you guys the process of how you use something as simple as nail polish or lacquer with some sawdust to fill sort of voids before the actual blending and finish process. So this video has turned into way longer than it should be, and I didn't even use this. Maybe for another project, but that's important too. But anyway, I'll leave this one here. I'll show you guys the next stage, what it starts to look like in the finishing. So probably what I'm gonna do is I'll finish maybe 75% of it, and I'll leave a little bit and show you what's involved with that. But that's a very important stage, how to fill these voids to get ready for the final blending process. I won't show you the actual stippling blending process. I'll just show you kind of the finished version because it takes a long time. The blending of the stippling will take me probably a good hour or more just to kind of work this in, because they use a machine stippling. I use a hand stippling tool. They're completely different things. I'll never match it perfectly. I'll do my best, but it'll take a long time. So anyway, I thought I'd show you what's involved, as you see right there. What's involved with repairing some tear out with some simple sawdust, nail polish, and some bedazzled artist's brushes. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. As always, any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer them. But if not, I'll catch you at part 5.